Welcome back and thank you for joining A Shark's Perspective. I am Kenneth Shark Kinney, keynote speaker, strategist, and your Chief Shark Officer. If you watch or follow much of the news, then you often hear about businesses growing coming out of the pandemic. But a lot of those had immense challenges. Not every brand was big enough to be known or strong enough to coast on their marketing. Think of all the small businesses and entrepreneurs, for example, who had conservative wallets or couldn't invest in ads and only relied on SEO, content, and some social. So where should we invest our war chest, even if we still have one, in order to maximize our marketing dollars, especially with all the changes that keep coming with search engine optimization? We're welcoming the legendary Bruce Clay, who's known as the father of SEO and is the founder and president of the global digital marketing optimization firm, Bruce Clay Inc. He's the author of Search Engine Optimization All-in-One for Dummies series of books and the author of Content Marketing Strategies for Professionals. And on this episode, we'll discuss being the father of SEO, doing SEO before Google was Google, where the dollars should be invested when the war chest is gone, digital location, being number 9 in a race, investing in SEO and content versus the convenience of PPC, having better content in a sea of sameness, mentoring the next group of marketers, the future of SEO and WYSIWYG sites, cold California waters, those dummy books, an obvious favorite shark, and a lot more. So let's tune in to the legendary Bruce Clay with a legendary shark on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. Bruce, welcome to A Shark's Perspective. It's an honor to have you here on the show. If you don't mind, tell us a little bit about your background and your career to date.
Happy to do it. For those of you that don't know, I started doing SEO really in 1996, which is 3 years before Google. And I've been given credit for actually coining the term, although nobody was really writing that down back then. If you do a search for who is the father of SEO, I show up for quite a few pages. So a lot of colleagues have given me credit. I operate a business out of Southern California, predominantly doing SEO, PPC, and content. Not doing a lot of everything digital, but doing search marketing. Over the years, I've spoken at about 300 conference sessions. I've written 3 books. I have offices around the world. We sponsor conferences. I mean, we're pretty much in the mainstream here. So yeah, that's what we do.
Well, obviously you're a legend. And so there's so much I want to dive into here. Bruce, I don't know if you knew about this, but we had a little bit of a pandemic over the last few years. And I'm not sure if you saw any of the nuttiness on the news. It may be news to you, but not every business grew. And a lot of marketing dollars got smaller. Marketing budgets were already challenged under best of times. But where do you see brands and where they should invest, especially when the war chest is gone? And that also applies really to startups as well, who don't start out with deep pockets anyway.
Right. You're right. We were in the midst of raising demand for search and online digital marketing programs. But then it really got set back. When COVID hit, we lost 38% of our clients, not because of disaster caused by COVID directly, where they had gotten ill, but rather supply chain problems and things like that. We had some businesses that really prospered for about 3 months, and then they ran out of supplies and they all but shut down. So it was kind of a trauma for a lot of businesses. And even in our case, there was a hit. However, the flip side was also true, that a lot of brands who did have a war chest, and fortunately for brands, they have tendency to have some money put away. They saw it as an opportunity to become more aggressive in marketing. So even though I lost 38%, I made up 40% with people becoming more aggressive digitally. And that has really worked out for a lot of them, to the point where I think brands have, if they had the war chest, the brands have succeeded. Now, don't get me wrong, brands many brands are not big companies. They're just known. And I think a lot of them have suffered. They had to conserve their war chest because it was bigger than zero, but not big enough. And they cut back. There was a joke I saw where it was the picture of one of those like emergency units on the wall with the fire extinguishers typically. And it said, in case of emergency, reduce marketing.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think a lot of companies view we got to maintain sales, we can coast on our marketing. Or in SEO's case, SEO is slower to get, but slower to lose. And so we'll coast on SEO and pay-per-click is pretty expensive. We'll get rid of the non-performing terms and cut back on our pay-per-click. And that impacts agencies, obviously. And so at the beginning, a lot of the smaller agencies got crushed. And I think that we've seen that. Now, last year, 2021, our business grew about 45% over prior years. And that's a pure bottom recognition that everything is now really centered on digital. Digital is the new location of the world. And you're either online and visible and performing well, or you don't exist. I mean, think about the following. I mean, New York, the mayor of New York is telling everybody, please go back to the office. And I think it's because they realize that all the restaurants and the 45,000 Starbucks are all starving because nobody's walking down the street anymore. And, there's an economy built around supporting people who are in offices. Now that we're remote, now everything is digital. I think this past holiday season, I don't even think I was in a store. I think I ordered everything for everybody online. And given that world, I think what we're saying is that if I were fortunate to be a brand, and if I had a war chest and I could withstand the hit and plan my budgets and determine I had enough to be aggressive, those are the people that really excelled. They went in, they took their position, they own it, and they're ahead. I wrote a blog post, and in it was, you're in a race and you're number 9, and you're running, and everybody in front of you suddenly comes to a standstill. They all stop. What do? Do you stop because they stopped, or do you pass them? And the more aggressive people that recognized that it was an opportunity, they sunk some money into it. And maybe they cut back on staff, and maybe they had a hit where they're consuming, the consumers weren't really driving their business as much. But if they could take the time to seize positions digitally, I think those were the big winners at a brand level. And fortunately, if you had a war chest, that worked.
Where you bought those purchases, were they all Amazon, or were they a bunch of local brands? Because I think about what you said with location, and agree. And there's such a 800-pound gorilla is not heavy enough to really describe Amazon. And they have such a well-crafted marketplace for people to go to. And I see people throwing some dollars, especially at PPC, trying to compete against that. And then they just get a lot of times just money wasted. But how do they really carve out themselves from a search engine perspective to where they're able to pull some of that traffic over, what's the advice you would give so that they don't necessarily have to fall into Amazon and either lose a percentage of the spend to pay Amazon directly, or they find somebody else's product or service online within that marketplace?
Well, I think in our prior conversation, I mentioned that my garage is where Amazon boxes go to die.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's sort of like the elephant graveyard. I mean, I have almost half of the boxes that I have compressed down in my garage have this smiley face on it. So we know I'm big on Amazon. But this year, I found that what I did was I searched for like unique gifts for wives or daughters or sons or family, or I did those kinds of queries because, if you go to Amazon, you're not really going to get suggestions. You're not really going to have a lengthy list to choose from. That's just the way it is. So I found out I did a lot more searches that were generic, non-Amazon searches, but I would only buy from somebody where I could order it online and get it fast enough. Now, one of the phenomenon I think I fell into is I was so used to, I can order it from Amazon and get it in a day or two. I'm so used to that in some of my gift buying, I couldn't buy from the store because their delivery was 10 days, right? They weren't geared to be as rapid. And I think that, what I've learned from it myself is that you have to plan ahead a little bit more. You can't just assume everything's going to show up if you order it a week before Christmas, right? But everything showed up on time. So I was able to make it work because I did have a little bit more planning in there. But yeah, little stores, as long as you can order it and get it. And when they say the delivery is going to be about this day, as long as you can tolerate that, I'm okay with non-Amazon. Amazon is where you go to for commodity, but not necessarily ideas. And I think that works.
Good point. As you said something about SEO being a little bit slower, I'm curious where you think this needs to even out as somebody who also offers both SEO services and PPC. When you're talking to a business, they're looking at it within a 3-month window, then obviously they're going to look at where they're spending their money from a PPC type level. If they want to trim down that spend, they can a lot with better content, with better SEO efforts geared towards that over a 6 month to a year once Google's crawled it. But how do we go about sort of narrowing that down or understanding that better from a timeline perspective than rather just thinking, here's what I can do in short term versus what I can do long term?
Well, the general belief in the industry is between 3 and 4x, the costs are higher in pay-per-click. So you're paying for that convenience, right? It's just like if you use a credit card, there's a 3.5% fee or 5.5% if there's 2% cash back. I mean, it depends on how the merchant wants to do it. But operationally, I think that you're right. It isn't going to be 3 months typically. Now, there are some SEO companies that will say, oh, it's not going to be 5-6 months. Well, they're talking about either exceptionally strong brand or local business or long tail keywords that are obviously you're going to win a seven word query, right? But the normal middle of the road header, closer to the head terms, the 2-word phrases, things like that, those take longer, and that's an investment. In a financial world, that would be considered something like a house or art. It takes longer to acquire the traffic, but it is an investment. And SEO is an investment that generates brand and awareness and top of mind recall, whereas an ad is hand to mouth more so. So in my case, where we run into people who say, I absolutely need the traffic, I'm a startup, I got to have it, I got to have it, I got to have it. Usually we recommend that they start a pay-per-click campaign, but that the operational implementation is it phases out except for a high return. Now, SEO, if that same account can pick up long tail, some low-hanging fruit, then SEO makes sense right away. But understand, if you're going to be in it for the long run, you kind of are playing in both. In the pay-per-click space, you're always going to have a couple of keywords that are always going to convert, right? It gets to the point where if every time you put in $1, you get 100 out, you go to the bank and put in a stack of dollars, right? Because the return is so high, but that isn't every keyword. And the cost is high because for that dollar you're putting in, you could be putting in 10 cents in SEO to get it. I have a lot of clients that have 20 to 100K monthly pay-per-click spends that are spending, 5 to 10K on SEO. And at 100K, a 10K SEO is almost a rounding error, right? So you got to do the SEO. The question is, how do you do it? Now, I think your question also gets into a little bit of business strategy. Like, are you going to bootstrap this? Or do I have a war chest? Am I funded? If I'm funded, I do both. If I'm bootstrapping my way in, I need to make some sales, but I can't wait 5-6 months for SEO to kick in. I got to do the pay-per-click. Our strategy on pay-per-click is to get it to the point where pay-per-click is only the things that constantly make money, and to maneuver SEO to be the rest. Now, I think we've discussed this before. You get into the point where Google keeps inserting things at the top of the web result page, right? Organic keeps moving down 10 pixels at a time, farther down the page. And in many cases, it looks like Google is putting 9 organic results on the page instead of 10, or sometimes as low as 4, based on how crowded they make the page. So in some scenarios, you may very well need to be doing pay-per-click just for first page visibility.
Yeah, I always think it's interesting because there's so many businesses, like you just said, during the pandemic, you lost roughly 40% of your business. So if you can afford to weather that storm, it's great. But then you start thinking about what can I do immediately to repair this for obvious reasons. And then you may end up skipping out on some stuff. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of businesses fall into this trap, and over again, they start investing too much. I'm a fan of advertising, but they start investing too much in advertising and not enough in SEO. And knowing that how well they can work together, it's imperative that you understand how to make certain that they are working together and not one making up for the other. So, we've talked, I know, before about this a few weeks ago, and that is the subject of vanilla. And by vanilla, I mean the huge amount of content that's being produced out there by a lot of people that's looks like everybody else's vanilla. And as I've heard you say before, it's lost its personality. How do you see the problems existing with content marketing today, especially with how brands should go about providing a remedy for it, considering how much of this is outsourced to third-party agencies and consultants who, let's say, want to play it very safe? Because I constantly get frustrated when I read content, not even as a marketer, but just as a consumer, and I can almost take the logo off, and I have no idea what's the differentiator for any of them.
Correct. You're right. You're using the word vanilla. I've used the word sterile, and we've had that conversation.
Yeah.
And I think that both works well to describe it. In the beginning, the people that wrote the content and became brands in digital were the people that expressed opinions. And they spoke from the heart and they said, no, the way you want to do this is. Well, over time, I think pages became too vanilla. They aren't expressing a personality. They're not saying, hey, folks, don't do that. They're just factual. They're becoming encyclopedias instead of becoming storytellers or expressing a personal opinion that we could take to the bank and count on, and we know they're an authority and we know they're an expert and we can trust them. If it's sterile, as you said, if it's vanilla, if you took the brand name off and it looks just like everybody else's, why would I trust it? How do you differentiate yourself from everybody else's? And I think that's been somewhat of a crisis on websites. And it's something that happens over time, like the frog in the water, right? It happened. And it took forever, 10 years for it to happen to websites. And a lot of websites now, including my own, I'll admit a weakness, including my own, over time became less opinionated and more regurgitated fact. This is how you do it. Fact, fact, fact. Not, folks, if you do that, it's dumb. I mean, people listen to that. And so I've started campaigns within my own company to rewrite my content to be sure that if it is something that is important to the reader, to say it as a personality trait, a voice for your company. But you're right, if it is too vanilla, if it is that, you get to be a problem. Now, I think that part of where there's two levels to that. We've had this discussion. The two levels are, I write it once and I never change it. It becomes stale after a while. That is a problem. And when I say that, there's a burden on everybody to maintain content, right? If I write content, I cannot assume for 5 years that it's absolutely still the case. In a lot of cases, content it ages, right? If I wrote about the American Civil War, that probably doesn't age. But if I wrote about, what cities various sports teams are in, they move around. I mean, you can't just do that. So there's a burden of maintaining your content, but then you have to have new content. And many people have gone out and have hired people to write their content that don't understand really your business, and they don't understand your corporate voice, and they don't write with personality because they're not you, and you lose all this.
Or to think about how much turnover there is in any good marketing department. Let's say they haven't farmed it out. The person writing the content today, it's a pretty good chance they're not going to be there more than 2 years. Unless they're locked in with that company. The C-level management, that's a whole other conversation. But the people that are in the basic content marketing roles that are on a brand, if there are those, they're probably going to move and change into different roles. And it's somebody else assumes it, takes your content, and they don't tweak much more than some minor phrases.
Right. So we have found that clients hire us to write content. And we actually we're not the cheapest game, but we're one of the better ones, I think, because we spend the time to figure out how do we write for the client, right? If I were that person, if I had that voice, how would I write for that voice? And how would I express it? And who are they selling to? And what is the expectation of that person relative to personality? You don't run into that. People may have personas, but they don't really write for the voice of the user. They just write. And then the user may have to change it, or but you're getting content that says the same thing over and over and over and over again for different people. And as you said, if you took the brand off, what is this site saying that's different from that site? And I think that's one of the problems the search engines have. They can't, how do they know?
That it's 95% filler and maybe 5% solution. And that's why, and I noticed this when working with an agency who had a person that was good on their team at writing some content for a brand I was working with. Some time passed, switched agencies. That same person that was at the original agency had changed jobs and went to work for the new agency. Just so happens they were involved with writing the content. And I started thinking about, what is the voice of the brand that I'm specifically talking about here? Is it the person that's transitory in their job when the brand has no idea what their voice really is? Is it Johnny or Susie who works at the agency, or is it what the logo actually, what the DNA of the company actually meant? And this gets lost because you have a lot of vanilla writers. That doesn't mean it has to be a Mark Twain original. It just means you really need to know your voice. And, every persona doesn't have to look the exact same as well. That's another thing I've noticed with a lot of personas, is they look so similar to every other company's personas when they aren't even when the companies aren't even in the same industry, and they generically portray people without really diving deep into how to solve their problem. And it's an issue. So I know you invest a lot of time in mentoring, and it's a real concern for you with SEO in particular, and going through these radical changes that we've seen all over search engine marketing as well. How do you go about mentoring the next group of marketers? What do you think they need to understand and not do what this generation of SEOers did? I mean, obviously this path has been carved out over the last 20 something years. We don't know how Google's algorithm is going to look like next Tuesday, let alone 2 years or 20 years from now. But what would be your advice on how to mentor this next group of SEOers?
So mentoring has a lot of places in our business. All of our clients, every time we have a call and we're going over things, we're totally transparent. We mentor our clients for every monthly sprint. So the clients perform well and they learn. But one of the things that we have always done, and when I say always, over 20 years, we've provided course material for our people. So we're a big believer in training. Just like SEO is never a once and done, neither is training. And the people that go out and they take a course and yay, I finished the course, and they don't take a course or pay attention for the next 5 years, they're out of date. So it's constant. As long as SEO is changing every Monday, it's a new industry every Monday, right? As long as that is changing, there's a burden on all of us as SEOs, as marketers, to stay current on that. So that is a good thing. Now, the hard part, and by the way, we have SEOtraining.com. It's a membership. It's not a once and done, and we cover a lot of things training. Everybody should be in it. That has been our approach. And I have, as a business, maybe this is good or bad as well, I have hired experts. Everybody in my business, we average 15 years experience per person. I mean, that's a lot. I have nobody in my SEO team with less than 10 years. So we've been hiring at that level. And I really miss developing people, which is why we have created SEO training, because that is how I get to help the industry stay alive. Now, what's my burden? As an SEO, I probably read 2 hours a day, at least. I follow all the important players, and I listen, I get my feeds from Twitter, and I sit on LinkedIn, and I follow this, and I read the newsletters there, and I go to those websites, and I'm involved. It's my role. And I think if I got too far from doing the hardcore SEO, my fingers would itch, right? One of those kind. But I'm in it. And I think that what we need to do is bring that to the evolving folks in the industry that are, a few years in, that have to learn. My business model doesn't say go out and hire a whole bunch of college students right out of school and spend the rest of your life training them. But my business model is to develop a program that will. And so that's our SEO training program. I think it's going to be critical to train people. I think one of the roles of an SEO is to train their boss on SEO. You don't just go into a company and do the job. You're the ombudsman for the industry within your company. You're the one that gets to say, hey, this is why this is important, and have people take courses. I built a 1-hour course just for people to have their bosses take the course. It's free. It's up on YouTube, right? You can find it on our site, the executive SEO course, Bruce Clay. You'll find it. And when you do this, I think that it isn't just that you have a burden of training the next generation of SEOs, but you have a burden of training your boss. People who may have come from merchandising or stores that are now in the digital world and are fumbling around. A lot of us in SEO started out maybe as programmers, maybe even web guys all along. That's all we ever did, maybe. But a lot of your bosses, they're not that school. And I think the burden of training is up and down, but I think it's constant. And we developed a program that is constant. It includes webinars and ask us anything Q&A sessions and courses and all sorts of stuff. That is what is going to cause the new generation to understand how to do SEO. And I think that's an important contributor.
Absolutely. So you're an OG in SEO. Where do you see SEO going in the future? Kind of look at your crystal ball and tell us what you think about the future of SEO.
Well, I'm a big believer in what I refer to as futures research, which is really crystal ball, if you want to be technical about it. For the time being, Google is trying, raise your hand if you believe that Google is in the business of making money, right? Everybody raise their hand. So Google isn't really caring so much about SEO. I think that as SEOs, and we've had this discussion as well, that there's sort of a separation now in SEO. It's less mainstream marketing and more programming-ish or technical-ish. It's becoming more technical. And that future, I think, is always going to be there. There's going to be a need for somebody to help websites be more visible.
Well, and I know you work, primarily with medium to large size businesses, right? So I think one of the things that obviously the pandemic has seen open up is so many people becoming entrepreneurs and solopreneurs. What would you like to see in a lot of the buy tools, if you will, from website design, in particular with SEO? Because so many people have got Squarespace sites or similar type sites like that don't have the most robust SEO available right now. But if you could sort of pick one thing that people could do more often to really optimize their own sites right now when they're on a self-published, quick design, drag and drop type WYSIWYG site, what would your recommendation be to how they improve SEO efforts?
Well, if they have the resources, I would put it on a non-WYSIWYG site. But the problem with a lot of the sites that are hosted for you or that are emerging sites is they design it for minimal maintenance. The company that built the software doesn't want to have to do a lot of maintenance work on it and see all sorts of unique bugs and things. So they restrict what you can do. And if it's hosted, you don't have access to the server to change some of the server files. So you are pretty much, hogtied. You're tied to a platform that was not designed for SEO, and in fact precludes a lot of the capabilities of SEO, for the sake of convenience and
Yeah,
ease.
yes, but because we're shopping on Amazon here and not ordering what we really want that would take 3 weeks to get there. I agree with all of that. And I coded sites for almost 2 decades, but the ease of drag and drop is ridiculous for what I would need to spend to do a much better site from an SEO perspective.
Yeah.
It frustrates me that I don't have more SEO capabilities, but I know so many people that don't know SEO or how to code a page. It's the last thing they're thinking of. They're thinking of, I just go to some tool that sells websites that hosts them, throw up something quickly, and then they ignore SEO completely.
Well, there's all sorts of sayings here. Like, the cheaper you want it, the cheaper you get it, right? So if you're looking for easy, pay a little bit, monthly hosting, that isn't necessarily going to help you, right? Think about what SEO is. It's a opportunity to express yourself as an expert to a search engine, and the search engine then can send you free traffic. Folks, the free traffic isn't free because the search engine expects you to pay your dues. Now, you're not paying them for the organic dues, but if you can't get them to appreciate you and see that you have made the investment in this accurate information in an accurate way, they're not going to appreciate you. If somebody has spent $100,000 on a website and you have spent $1,000, and they have depth of content, and you just made it quick and easy, they're not the same.
Agree completely. Well, Bruce, asked this of all the guests on my show. You're an LA guy, not that far from the coast. I just did a dive off California coast. What is your favorite kind of shark and why?
You are. I don't think the rest of the sharks are very, very
It's
good.
the best content answer that will make SEOs happy as well. All right. Well, Bruce, it's a special time in the show. Are you ready for the 5 most interesting and important questions that you're going to be asked today?
Okay, I'm ready.
These are not too bad. All right, here we go. So you are the author of the best-selling Search Engine Optimization All-in-One for Dummies books. Which one do you prefer? The first edition, that feeling when you, and it's really, we're not talking about just the information in it, but the feeling you got when you finished the first edition, or each new edition that you write?
The first edition was more a feeling of relief because that was a monumental effort. It's 700 pages. So
like 765 or something like that. I remember looking it up.
Yeah, it's a pretty healthy book. It's really 9 books in one, and it covers SEO and servers and Core Web Vitals and all this stuff, right? Well, anyhow, back then, the first edition was a relief to have it done. The second and third editions, by the way, if you get the fourth edition, which just came out last month, your book has been pretty popular. And so I think the last edition, the edition we just did, was really as satisfying as the first, because we got to go back through the book and really critique it. So in the last edition, I have a very good friend, Christopher Jones. He's been around in the industry as long as I have. And Chris and I decided to go through the book with different eyeballs. And we really tweaked it up. And I think the fourth edition, the one that just came out, is really, I think it's great. And I'm really happy to have that. Maybe there'll be a fifth edition down the road, but for right now, I don't see a need to do that. I think the first was great. The fourth was great.
All right. Number 2, the beaches of California or the mountains?
All right. So I think the mountains. And the reason isn't because I don't like the beaches, but the ocean here is cold.
It's ice cold.
It's 62 to 64 degrees, something like that. And in the summer, it goes all the way up to 65. I mean, to me, I'm a warm guy. I prefer to be pretty warm. So I prefer the mountains.
Yeah, the beaches are always going to win for me, but I just got back from a dive in Florida at a time when the water should be would probably, the water temperature in Florida in winter is considered at coldest what the warmest in LA waters would be. I remember the first time I went out and I ran into the water and I didn't know. And that, and you learn once that it's like a polar plunge. Yes. All right. So number 3, you got friends or family coming into town. Although the seasons roughly overlap, you have a choice of taking them to a game. Are you taking them to an LA Dodgers game or an LA Lakers game?
Dodgers.
Yeah, better experience, baseball, better experience. All right, number 3.
It's easier to get the food.
That is true. All right, number 4, PPC or content marketing?
Content marketing. I actually wrote a book on content marketing. So I'm a little bit inclined to do that. I think that to win the heart of your site visitor, as you heard, I was talking about personality, but it's also the story. It's, you can't express your brand, your vision, your mission with pay-per-click.
Yeah.
And you just can't. And I think that while people who are on a mission, I got to buy this, I got to buy it right now, deep down in the funnel, they will click on your ad, but you're going to pay for it, but they'll click on your ad. I think that winning the hearts of your consumer can only be done with content marketing.
Yeah, definitely worth checking out content marketing strategies for professionals. So I remember. All right, number 5, and the most important question that you're going to be asked today is biscuits or cornbread?
Biscuits, if they have gravy.
Even better choice. All right, so Bruce, where can people find out more about you, read the books, keep up with what your thoughts are in the SEO and marketing space and more?
Well, I have 3 websites: SEOtraining.com, SEOtools.com, and BruceClay.com. And Bruce Clay is where I do my services. Obviously, it was my first website, so that's important. And you really ought to try it. For instance, it's super fast and it's complex. And it's sort of the hybrid of the two. So, it's kind of a showcase thing for our company. Find me at bruceclay.com. My email's bclay@bruceclay.com. So it's pretty easy to find me. I do engage, so I'm happy to answer questions.
All right. Well, Bruce, thank you again very much for being with us today on A Shark's Perspective.
Thank you very much. Kenneth, I love being here. I'd love to come back.
So there was my conversation with Bruce Clay, known as the father of SEO and the founder and president of the global digital marketing optimization firm, Bruce Clay, Inc. He's the author of the Search Engine Optimization All-in-One for Dummies series of books and the author of Content Marketing Strategies for Professionals. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from our conversation with him. First, so where to invest that war chest? If you're considering more content and SEO versus running PPC ads, for example, Don't get caught in the prison of two ideas that so many do. It's one versus the other in most arguments, and content and SEO often gets looked at as David versus the Google Goliath, and we know who wins that story. But one is not the sacrifice of the other, despite what some pundits spew, when you still have to give proper focus to other factors like next quarter's sale numbers, customer experience, and other forms of marketing as well. You want me to evaluate your performance in a 3 to 6 month period with the tactics and levers you pulled or didn't pull? Well, those insightful blog posts likely won't drive traffic to your site when the CFO needs a return immediately with a new offering. And ads only should never be the end-all be-all anyway, because they have a diminishing return as well. It simply requires you to have a thoughtful approach to how they all work together. Measure what you can and measure what you can pull back from on spend. Sounds easy, but most don't fare well, and then they're caught in that prison. Invest your war chest wisely so that the C-suite is happy, but never forget to invest in the most important C-word title, the customer, and what they need. Second, so many of the buy sites, the WYSIWYG drag and drop sites are great, but their SEO capabilities are limited. But you see companies like Squarespace doing Super Bowl ads because the explosion in entrepreneurs and solopreneurs is growing at such a fast pace. Convenience is great, but invest anytime you can into optimizing your own site with whatever SEO capabilities you can use. You'll definitely see the results in time. Third, most content, it seems, has lost its personality. This is where I yell about bloggers at agencies and brands a lot especially. Take the logo off anything you do, especially your content marketing and your blog posts. And if there is not much difference between you and your competition, then something is wrong. And trust me, it's worth a look. You may feel like it's safe, but I have no idea what the differentiator is in your sea of sameness. Why should I choose you if you're just another flavor of the same vanilla that I can get from a cheaper brand? The way brands and agencies are structured with moving pieces, CMOs and agencies add to this problem as well. Most content sucks, and I have no idea as a customer as to why I should pick you because your competition doesn't have your voice, your personality, or your differentiator. Voice your difference. Show some personality. Don't mimic the competition just because they wrote a blog post a certain way. Be a better writer and content marketer. Consumers will reward you for it. Got a question? Send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. I am so thankful to everyone who listens. Please consider writing a review and letting me know your thoughts on the show. Time is a war chest too, and I hope that you'll continue to invest that here and join us on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.